this lesson, this one's a little bit different because we're basically going to be doing a miniature lesson on fractions. So it's dealing with all of the basics of fractions. We're going to be figuring out what a fraction is. We're going to be adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, comparing fractions, and kind of going from fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. So we're basically going to cover like a bunch of little things just as a refresher if you forget about fractions. This is the kind of video for you. Alright, so first and foremost, what is a fraction? It sounds all complex and fancy, but it's really something you deal with every day, but you don't really realize it because you're not writing it out like this, but you do deal with it. Fractions is basically when you split up one whole into equal parts. Or you could think of splitting is the same as dividing. So you're dividing it up. Even just dividing up a bag of candy, so many to each person, you make sure each person has the same amount. That's dividing or splitting a fraction of the bag up. Cutting up a pizza, that is splitting up a fraction. If you're splitting a brownie, or if you're splitting something like that, that is anything like that, you're dealing with fractions, you just don't realize it. So, first and foremost, a fraction is you have, in order to write one out, you write the small part, so the part that's shaded, over the whole. So basically the fraction that I shaded in is 2 parts out of 5 parts. So I'm only talking about 2 of these equal 5 parts. So 2 over 5 is our fraction. For this example, we have a circle cut up into equal spots. We have it cut up into 8 equal parts. And this is only shaded, I only shaded 3 out of the 8. So this is like 2 out of the 5, 3 out of the 8. 10 people out of 20 in the class, you know, anything like that, that's talking about a fraction of something. So it's just a little part of a whole thing. Alright, in order to add and subtract fractions, you need to make sure that your denominators are the same. Now, why is that true? Now, let's go ahead and look at an example. 1/2 plus 3/8. You can't just add 1 plus 3 because your pieces are divided into different amounts. So this first one, you have 1 out of 2 shaded, and then in the second one you have 3 out of 8 shaded. You can't really add those up very easily because you can't just do 1 plus 3 because this 1 is so much bigger than this 1. So just like I said that you have to separate fractions into equal parts, you also have to combine them in equal parts because these aren't 1 yet. So we need to make sure our denominators are the same. Now the reason why we do that is because we want it separated into the same amount of pieces. So I need to be able to say, well, here's, if you had 2 pieces of pizza, okay, well, here's 3 pieces of pizza. Go ahead and add 1 more out of the 8 pieces of pizza. That would be adding with fractions because you'd be adding an equal part. So we need to go ahead and divide this up into 8 pieces instead of 2. In order to do this, you have to go ahead and multiply both the bottom and the top by a number to give you the same number at the bottom. So we want to get 8 at the bottom, so we have to multiply 2 by 4, and we have to multiply 1 by 4 to be able to keep our fraction balanced. Because if you see here, 4 out of the 8 shaded is the same amount as 1 out of the 2 shaded. Because both of this is talking about 1/2 of a pizza. But now we can go ahead and combine them. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts of the 8. And I have 1, 2, 3 parts of the 8. So now that our denominators are equal, we can just go ahead and add 4 plus 3. Because if you see that, if this was a pizza, and I wanted to go ahead and put these 4 into this box, you can put it in and you will see that you're missing 1 piece. So you now have 7 out of the 8 because you added 3 on to your pie. Okay, in order to multiply fractions, this is probably the easiest things that you ever do with fractions. You basically put them there, you multiply across. So if you have 2/5 over 4/7, you go ahead and multiply 2 times 4 and get 8, and you multiply 5 times 7 to get 35. So that's probably the easiest thing that you can do with fractions, and we like it. It's a little bit of a break for our brains. Okay, division, it looks all complex at first, but really it's the same as multiplication once you tweak some things. So to divide, you need to flip the second fraction and multiply. So if we are doing 2/3 divided by 1/4, we need to flip this second fraction. So instead of having 1/4, we'd have 4 over 1, and you just multiply across now. So then you would multiply 2 times 4 to get 8, and 3 times 1 to get 3. Alright, let's go ahead and look at a few more examples. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and look at comparing fractions. So if we're comparing fractions, basically we're saying greater than, less than, equal to, all of that stuff. So let's go ahead and look at this first example that I set up. I set up 1/3 and 1/8. Now, this one, they're not separated into the same denominator, so we don't know how many pieces this one is in comparison to this one. However, if you had a pizza and you were going to cut it up, and I said, cut it up into 3 pieces, you know that those are going to be 3 really big pieces because you have one whole, but you're not cutting it up into very many pieces. So they're going to be big pieces. So that's how I knew that 1 out of 3 is bigger than 1 out of 8 because the more slices you cut it up into, the smaller the pieces get, so the less of the pizza you're getting. So 1 out of the 3 is bigger than 1 out of the 8. Okay, now when you get to more complex fractions like 3/4 and 1/2, you need to go ahead and figure out, well, you could compare it by doing a picture, but sometimes a picture is not going to be quite accurate. So basically what you need to do is go ahead and make sure that your denominators are the same. Just like we did with adding and subtracting, you want that denominator to be the same so you can compare and add on. That's what we're going to do here now. So instead of saying 3 out of 4, I'm going to go ahead and cut this pie into 4 pieces as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to multiply 2 by 2 and 1 by 2. So now instead of 1/2, I have 2. Alright, so since we need the denominators to be the same, I need to change the 2 to a 4. And in order to do that, I need to multiply a number on the top and the bottom. So I need to multiply, what's going to multiply by 2 to give me 4? So I'm going to have to multiply by 2 and then multiply by 2. Now the reason why we have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number is because we do not want to change the balance of it. So since we still want it to be 1/2 out of, we still want it to be 1/2. This is the most simplified form of the fraction 1/2. So basically we want it to still be that balanced, but we want to change the denominator so that we can compare them better. So that's why I want the 4's to be the same. So now that I have changed this to a 2/4, I could see that, okay, now my denominators are the same. So now I can see that 3 out of 4 is bigger than 2 out of 4. So that's how I know I can put my the greater than symbol here. Alright, let's go ahead and look at this one question up here. This is kind of just telling you like a phrase, and you need to go ahead and write the fraction for it. So sometimes that's a harder part about fractions, is being able to come up with the fraction in the first place. So it says 9 inches is what part or what fraction of 1 foot? So first of all, we need inches over inches. So in order to do that, we need to figure out how many inches are in 1 foot, and that is 9 over 12. So we have 12 inches in 1 foot. So I put 9 in the numerator because we are talking about 9 out of the 12 inches. So now that we have that written, we have to simplify the fraction. Now basically simplifying a fraction is just taking an equal part out of both. So just how I multiplied onto both, we need to divide to get out of both, because we basically want it to be in the smallest form possible. Now right now, 9 and 12 both have 3 in it. So we're going to go ahead and take out a 3 out of both. So we're going to be taking out a 3 out of the top and a 3 out of the bottom. So 9 divided by 3 gives you 3, and 12 divided by 3 gives you 4. So our fraction is 3/4. So 9 inches out of 1 foot is 3/4 of the foot. Alright, let's go ahead and look at changing fractions and decimals back and forth. So first of all, we're going to be talking about changing decimals into fractions. Now the easiest way to do it is basically to put it over a 10. Now this is not the most simplified form of the fraction, but it is going to get it into a fraction for us. So one way to do this is look at your decimal, and you're going to move your decimal, and however many humps that you move it over, you're going to put it over a 10 of that many zeros. So for example, if I was moving this decimal place over, I'd be moving it over 1, that's 1 0, 2, that's another 0, 3. So we're moving over 3 spaces. So in order to do that, we're going to have to put, now our number is 912 over 1,000 with 3 zeros because we moved it over 3 places to the right to make it a whole number now. So after after that, then you would simplify. So I see that we have this number ends in a 2 and this one ends in a 0. So I know it's at least divisible by 2 and probably several more numbers because they're big numbers. Let's go ahead and look at how to change fractions into decimals. Alright, so we have the fraction 4/5 and we want it to get into decimal form. Now one way to do this is to try to make the denominator a form of 10. So in order to do this, you want to go ahead and multiply 5 times 2 will give us 10 in the denominator, and then 4 times 2 in the numerator is going to give us 8. So basically we're going to put 8 in the tenths place. So we're going to put 0.8. Or you can think of it as doing the reverse of this. So every time you put move a decimal place, you move a decimal place per 0. So if we're going to do it the opposite way, we put it at the end and we move 1 decimal place over to the left. So now we have 0.8 is our decimal for 4/5. I'm going to do the same for this fraction, 1/2. Now most of the time people know the decimal for the fraction 1/2 right off the bat, but let's go ahead and look at how to get it. So I want to go ahead and get a 10 in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply 2 by 5, and I'm going to multiply 1 by 5. So I'm still going to have a balanced fraction, but this time it's going to tell me how many zeros to move it over. So I have 5/10. So now I'm going to go ahead and write the number 5, because that's my numerator, and I'm going to move over my decimal however many zeros I have in the denominator. So since I have 1 0, I'm going to move it over 1 time, and we have the decimal 0.5, which is commonly already known right off the bat for 1/2. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to message me or anything like that, and we can get some of your personal questions kind of smoothed out a bit. But this is kind of the basics, and just let me know if you have any questions.